The Florida Gators will have their spring football game this Thursday night, man. And a lot of y'all are saying, man, why is Billy Napier having his spring game on a Thursday night? He actually addressed that with the media and essentially just said, a lot of people have their spring game coming up. Everybody and their mama has it this weekend. It feels like. So people that we recruit against, recruits are going to have to decide if they want to go to Florida, do they want to go to other schools for their spring game, if they want to visit. He's saying, we're going to make it real easy. We're going to have it on a Thursday night. Calendar's wide open. He said fans a lot of times will take work off on a Friday and come down and watch the Gators, make a long weekend out of it. So if that's the question you have around why is it on Thursday night, Billy Napier answered that. More power to him. Betting on his team. I love it. What are some things we got to watch for this spring football game? Myself, much like you, we're watching this quarterback competition. I say it every spring game. I say it every spring preview. It's for taking a temperature. It's not for making absolutes. Even if Jack Miller comes out there and goes 20 for 20 and 4 touchdowns, is he your starter? I don't know if they name him the starter. I think you probably feel pretty good about Jack Miller. But what I want to know is, do these quarterbacks, rather which quarterback, engineers scoring drives? If you've watched this show for any period of time and you've heard my thoughts on different quarterback battles, I just want to know who's getting us in the paint, man. You had a quarterback who had the epitome of highlight reel potential every time he touched the rock with AR. Now you got Graham Mertz, you got Jack Miller. AR was a highlight reel. He also was inconsistent. Which one of these guys is consistent? I'd love to see that during the spring football game. Now for Jack Miller, does his competition with Graham Mertz cause him to elevate his play? Because everybody is assuming that Graham Mertz is coming from Wisconsin. He's going to start. He's going to be the guy, and that may be the case. Heck, I'd be hard-pressed to tell you I don't think Graham Mertz is going to be the starter. I do. I think he'll be QB1. But if Jack Miller just puts out a statement game in the spring game or puts out some sort of statement from this game into fall camp, how much does that change this game? And sometimes, for different individuals, all it takes is a little bit of the competitive juices to get flowing, have the lights flick on, have that competitive atmosphere. Sometimes that's all it takes. So Jack Miller, how much of his play is elevated by this competition? I'm very excited to see it. Now, with Graham Mertz, the feel around Florida for him, the hope around Florida fans, is that his troubles at Wisconsin weren't Graham Mertz's fault. Those are Wisconsin's fault. That's the Wisconsin offense. That's the 3 tight ends and 2 fullbacks they're trotting out there every other series. That was the issue. That's why we didn't see Graham Mertz really flourish in Madison, Wisconsin. Remains to be seen. How comfortable does he look in this offense? Because he's been on campus for a very short period of time, but everyone is raving about his commitment to being in the playbook and being in the film room and the way that he's just committed himself to this process. Do we see a comfortable-looking Graham Mertz out there? And what I mean by that is if you're watching the broadcast at home, does Graham Mertz look like he's getting through the reads comfortably? Do we see happy feet in the pocket where he's sort of panicking, looking around and not knowing where to go to the football? Do we see him just look smooth, ball out on time, go from first progression to second progression? Does he look smooth? That's going to tell us a lot in terms of how far along he is comfortability-wise within this system. Now, it'll be a spring game, obviously. They'll be 11-on-11. Lights will be bright. It'll be the closest thing to a game atmosphere they've gotten so far this spring. Does he look comfortable? Should tell us a lot. I'm also curious as it pertains to this quarterback race, how are the reps divvied up? Is it Jack Miller first and Graham Mertz second? Graham Mertz second, Graham Mertz first, Jack Miller second. You hear what I'm saying. I think there's something to be said about who ends up starting in the spring game or who ends up, getting the first reps. Just keep an eye on that. I don't think it's an absolute, but I do think that reps will tell you some sort of story. Just for taking a temperature. Whoever takes the first team reps may or may not be your starter, but just keep an eye on it because I think it's insightful. What does the defense look like organizationally and from a depth standpoint? We got to talk about that, but make sure you're subscribed. Florida fans, listen, man, we talk ball here every single day. We have had a ton of y'all join us over the past few weeks, and we appreciate you for that. It's an exciting time in Gainesville. We're going to talk a lot of Gators. I promise you that, so make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Also, follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram, @JDPiquel. All right? You would also be in company with John Cena. Listen, I don't want to flex, but John Cena followed me on Twitter, and it was probably the greatest day of my life. All right, we'll keep on rolling. What does the defense look like organizationally and from a depth standpoint? Because right now, you put in Austin Armstrong, a new DC, and I just want to see how structurally sound they are. What would that look like in a spring game? just limiting the number of busted assignments. And a busted assignment, quite frankly, to just put it most simply, is you have an individual not doing their job in the wrong place, and that shows itself by the offense getting a big play. Hey, linebacker, you were supposed to contain the edge. Instead, you hit that B gap, so you were further inside than you were supposed to be. Big touchdown run. Not good. And the reason why I want to know about that is that tells me just how far along they are in getting Austin Armstrong's defense into place. Getting your alignment and assignment is the very first thing it takes to play good defensive football. Do they do that consistently in the spring game? If they don't panic, but it should be encouraging if they're able to be assignment sound in the spring game, because that means they have a good jumping off point to continue that into fall camp. The other thing we got to look at, depth. What's going on there, man? What's the deal? Because we saw last year, the starters were good for Florida. Starters were solid. But after the starters got a little more dinged up, after those starters got worn down, maybe they need a play or two to get rested on the sideline, then it was a matter of, what's Florida doing here, man? What is Florida after those starters get out of the game? So what you should watch for in the spring game is our 2s and 3s making plays. Do we have a second string, insert whatever position here on the defensive side, flashing? Because if you do, that's a good sign. That means that cat is likely pushing whoever's in front of him for some PT. It also means you just have guys that aren't starters that are making plays. And that's a good sign, too. That's a welcome sight by Florida fans. Now, the good people at Gators Online are telling us the depth is improved defensively. So I'm very excited to see that come into a game-like scenario for the Gators in this spring football game. Now, here's the last thing I'm curious about. Can we get a playmaker to make some plays in the pass game for the Florida Gators? Because we've heard a lot of really good things from the spring camp. Ricky Pearsall sounds like he's cooking. Borderline unguardable when it comes to these one-on-ones, or so we're hearing. Andy Jean, the freshman, he's balling, man. A lot of people are saying he could end up being a starter for them. Again, Andy Jean, the freshman, potentially being a starter. He's a guy that we've heard a ton about during spring. His name keeps coming up and keeps coming up and keeps coming up. I would love to see both these cats get after it in the spring football game. I'd love to just see what we've heard during spring camp carry over to the spring game. That would just give me a little bit of peace of mind if I'm a Florida Gator fan. Because then I've at least seen it, right? I've at least seen it on your resume, because men lie, women lie, tape don't lie. I've seen it in 11-on-11 in a game-like setting, you balling at wide receiver. Because if they can do that, if both these guys can be game breakers for them on the outside, or even just be more than serviceable and make the defense have to worry about them, Florida's going to be all right offensively, y'all. I know you got questions about the O-line, you got questions about quarterback, but if you're able to run the football effectively, like Florida will be able to, safeties start to creep up. Trevor Etienne, Montrell Johnson, they're going to make these safeties creep up. They're going to make these linebackers a little bit more trigger happy. That means big plays are available in the pass game. If you can capitalize to Ricky Pearsall and or Andy Jean, you're going to be dangerous offensively because you're multifaceted. Because then we can't just key on Montrell Johnson. Because we can't just key on Trevor Etienne. Then I have to worry about Ricky Pearsall over the top. Have to worry about what he's going to do. I think that'll also factor into the quarterback battle in terms of who can cash in when that does happen. Another video for another time. But if they can have some playmakers, make some plays during the spring game, in the pass game, that would make me really excited if I'm a Florida Gator fan. I think that would be a really, really good sign for this offense. So we're going to watch this one, man. Thursday night, it's on and popping in the swamp, baby. Florida spring game should be a whole lot of fun. Headed into year 2 of the Billy Napier era, baby. It's football time, man. The pads are back on popping. Spring ball, we've missed you. Spring games, we've missed you for sure. Now, make sure you're locked in here. Like I said, we're going to talk college football every single day. More likely than not, multiple times a day. We talk a lot of Florida. I'll just leave it at that. Lock it in right here. Subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Instagram. @JDPiquel. We'll come back here after the spring game. We'll chop it up. All right? We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.